Welcome back. This is our fourth and last video on chapter 1. We're going to start on slide 38 of the slideshow. So let me go ahead and start sharing that with you. And we're going to be discussing body cavities. So we've learned a lot about different parts of how to name and how to use the right terminology for different body regions. And now we're going to talk about the inside of the body and how the inside of your body is organized in different cavities. So imagine that the inside of your body is organized in different baggies. And these baggies contain fluid, and then the organs float in these fluids. So the reasons why we have body cavities are, one, to protect the organs. So we're going to learn that we have a cavity around the brain, we have a cavity around the spinal cord, we have a cavity around the heart. Those different cavities are filled with fluid, and they're going to help anytime and protect those organs when we move, when we stretch, when we are in a car accident. There's a little bit extra protection. So the body cavity provides protection, and it also provides room to grow and to change shape of your internal organs. So if you imagine that as you are digesting food, the food is moving through your large intestine. And so the large intestine is changing shape as it expands to take that food and then push it along. And so we want to have a loose space, a loose cavity, an area for it in where we can keep it safe, but where we can also keep it confined, but able to move like it needs to. Now, there are two major cavities inside the body. There's the dorsal cavity and the ventral cavity. So the dorsal cavity, remember, that means like on the back side. The dorsal cavity is going to contain the brain and the spinal column. So there's one great big baggie that surrounds the entire brain all the way down through the spinal column. Then we also have the ventral body cavity, and the ventral body cavity is also called the coelom, coelom. And the ventral body cavity is going to be everything on the front side, in front of your spinal cord, in front of your vertebra. And it's going to contain all your heart, your lungs, your digestive organs, and all that. So that's going to be on the ventral side, the front side. Now, within the ventral side, we also have some different cavities. So we have a thoracic cavity, which is going to be the cavity that's entirely enclosed inside your chest wall. And then we have the abdominal cavity, which is going to be below the chest, and it's going to contain all your digestive organs and things like that. So if we look here in this picture, the ventral body cavity is going to be separated by the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is a muscle that lies right underneath your rib cage, and that diaphragm is a really, really thin muscle. Above that diaphragm is going to be your thoracic cavity, and below that is all the way to your pelvic bones is going to be your abdominal pelvic cavity. The thoracic cavity is going to be broken into three major areas. There's a great big baggie that fills up your chest. And within that baggie, there's three more baggies. Okay. So one baggie holds your right lung. That's called your right pleural cavity. There's another baggie that holds your left lung. That's called your left pleural cavity. And then there's a baggie that fills up the entire central area. That's called the mediastinum. The mediastinum is going to contain your trachea, which is your windpipe, your esophagus, which is the tube that goes from your stomach to your mouth, and then some major blood vessels like your aorta. And it also contains another baggie, which is called the pericardial cavity, and that surrounds the heart. So your body has a big ventral cavity, so a great big ventral cavity that is everything on the front side of your body. Above that, there's a huge bag that contains everything in your chest. And within that bag in your chest, there are three bags, the left and right pleural cavities and the mediastinum. And then within the mediastinum, there's your pericardial cavity in addition to some other things. So the pericardial cavity is just for your heart. The abdominal pelvic cavity is everything below your diaphragm down to your pelvic bones. And it's also separated into two other baggies. The top baggie, the superior baggie, is your abdominal cavity, and it contains most of your digestive organs. And your pelvic cavity, which is the lower part inside your pelvis, and that's going to contain mostly your urinary bladder and your reproductive organs. So we have all of these different cavities, all these different baggies. Now the baggies are lined or made out of, the bags are made out of serous membranes. Serous membranes are going to line the body cavity and cover the organ. So they're going to wrap the organs really tight, and then there's going to be a space filled with fluid, and then there's going to be the outside serous membrane that actually makes the cavity. The part of, and all of these are like balloons. These baggies are filled. Okay, so I want you to think of a baggie that's half filled with water. Okay, so the bag has a front side and a back side, and then it's filled with fluid on the inside. If you take your fist and you wrap that bag filled with water, you wrap that around your fist. The part of the bag that's touching your fist is called the visceral layer. So that side of the bag is the visceral layer. The outside of the bag that's not touching the organ, your fist, is called the parietal layer. And then the fluid inside is called the serous fluid. So your heart, if this is your heart, and this is about the size of your heart, if this is your heart and you wrap it with this bag around it, the inside layer that's actually touching the heart is the visceral layer, and the outside layer is the parietal layer. So all of the baggies are actually wrapped around organs inside your body. So let's go back to the thoracic cavity. The thoracic cavity has a right and left pleural cavity, plus the mediastinum, which contains all kinds of stuff, plus the pericardial cavity. The pericardial cavity is where your heart's located. So if we look, just first of all, let's go ahead and look up here in the lower or the upper right-hand side. Here's your baggie, okay? And it is like it's wrapped around the heart. The inside layer is called the visceral pericardium, and the outside layer is called the parietal pericardium. The visceral pericardium is actually attached so tightly to the heart that we cannot remove it. So those visceral layers are really incorporated and fused to the organs that they're around. The outside layer is usually fused to the body wall, to the inside of the body wall. So let's go ahead and look. Here's the diaphragm. So above the diaphragm is going to be the thoracic cavity. And in this picture, this is a sagittal plane, right? We're cutting the left and the right. We're looking inside. This is the pleural cavity, and it's going to contain a lung. And this is the pericardial cavity, which contains the heart. So let's look over here at this picture. This is a transverse section or a transverse plane cut. So this is cross section, and we're looking down. Here's the right lung, here's the left lung, and here's the heart. Look at the white layer that's around the heart. So there's a white circle around the heart. The white is actually the fluid. There are two layers to that. There's two serous membranes around that heart. The first one is the darker purple line, which I can't, you know what, I'm going to go here. So there's the inside line here. That's the visceral pericardium. And then there's this outside layer here. And that's the parietal pericardium. And then the white is just fluid. So we have the serous membrane is wrapped, or the cavity is lined on the inside and the very inside around the organ, and then also around the body cavity. So the pericardial cavity is everything inside those serous membranes. You can see the same thing is true for the right lung and the left lung here. So we've got the thoracic cavity that we can see in this picture right here. The thoracic cavity is everything in the chest. There is the right and left pleural cavities. And then there's this area right here, the mediastinum. And the mediastinum is not wrapped in the serous membrane like everything else. But the mediastinum is going to be that entire area, and it holds the pericardial cavity inside. So the thoracic cavity has right and left pleural cavities, the mediastinum, and then within the mediastinum, we also find the pericardial cavity. Now, what kind of questions am I going to ask? I am going to say, what organ is contained by the pericardium? What layer of the pericardium is touching the heart? That would be the visceral pericardium. I would ask what is contained within the right pleural cavity? That's the right lung. Okay, what other things are contained within the mediastinum other than the heart? And that's going to be the trachea, your windpipe, your esophagus, and major blood vessels. Those are the kinds of questions I'll ask about this section of the body cavities. So the thoracic cavity is everything up above, but then also in that picture, you can see that there's an abdominal pelvic cavity, the stuff that's below. So let's look here. So here, everything above is the thoracic cavity, and then everything here is the abdominal pelvic cavity. The abdominal pelvic cavity can be separated into this area here, which is the abdominal cavity, and then this smaller area down here, which is called the pelvic cavity. So let's talk about those. The abdominal pelvic cavity, so everything around your gut, is lined with the peritoneum, which is the peritoneal cavity. So the peritoneal cavity is the space there, and then it is wrapped with the peritoneum. The visceral peritoneum covers all the organs in your abdomen. So it covers your digestive tract, it covers your stomach, it covers your liver. The parietal peritoneum is going to be lining the inside wall of your abdomen. The abdominal cavity, the abdominal pelvic cavity has the upper portion, which is the abdominal cavity, and then a lower portion, which is called the pelvic cavity. So the abdominal cavity is from your diaphragm to the top of your pelvic bones. And it has primarily digestive enzyme or digestive organs inside of it. So that's where your stomach's going to be. That's where your small intestine, your large intestine are going to be. Behind that, if we carefully lifted out the abdominal cavity, we would find some organs that are actually attached to the back of your body wall. And those organs are called retroperitoneal, retro behind the peritoneum. And that's going to be the pancreas, the kidneys, ureters, and part of your digestive tract. But really, I want you to know that your pancreas is retroperitoneal. Your kidneys are retroperitoneal, and your ureters, those are the things that can connect the kidneys down to the bladder. Those are also retroperitoneal. So those things are not within a body cavity. They're not within a serous membrane. They're behind the serous membrane. And you'll actually see this when you, or maybe you've already seen it when you did your rat dissection. If you did your rat dissection and you kind of pulled all the guts out, you saw that the kidneys are attached strongly to the back of the body wall. That means that they're retroperitoneal. They're not inside that baggie that makes up the abdominal cavity. The pelvic cavity is the lower portion, and it's much smaller. It's within the pelvis, so it's within your pelvic bones, and it contains reproductive organs, the rectum, which is the last portion of your digestive tract, and then your bladder. Those things lie within the pelvic cavity. So here in this picture, down here, we can see the pelvic cavity and the abdominal cavity right here. All right, so that's it. You did it. Very happy for you. I'm very excited. You are through chapter 1. Hopefully you have gotten a good introduction, but then you really need to spend the time to focus and try and memorize all of these different words and try and start using them in lab and in lecture. Ask questions during recitations, but you can do this. It's just a lot of new words. So I hope that's it. Please fill in your study guide and then come to me and ask questions, and I'll help you fill in that study guide and make sure that you have all the answers that you need. All right, I will see you for the next chapter. Bye.